Good morning. My name is Stephanie Keahey. I serve as the Independent Living Youth Consultant for the Central Region of Alabama. So that means that if you have any teens that are in the Central Region that are in IL that you need help with, there is a consultation for that. So please reach out to us. We'll give out some extra info after this webinar.
Today, we are going to discuss getting to know your teacher. And we are going to be discussing how to have success in our independent living programs with our independent living clients that we serve, success with our community partners, but we're going to discuss it from being a student and having a student perspective. Now, for this training, we're going to view the services that we provide um, as a school, our school. So, for the sake of this training, imagine yourself as the chancellor or the principal of your own IL school. Yes, and every client that you touch, every teenager that you come across is an enrolled student in your institution of learning. But the kicker is that you have to remember that you are also a student in your own school. Sounds weird, right? Let's dig into it. I'm excited to be your teacher. Everybody remembers the first day of school. You remember the excitement, you remember the plans that you had for the first day of school, how you wanted your year to go. You thought about your friends, you thought about the new coworkers that you would make, the new teachers, the new lesson plans, how you would impact your class this year. All of that goes through your mind at the first day of school. The same is true for our IO teams when they're getting ready to come to whatever services that it is that we provide for them. It is the exact same concept. They feel the same way. They're nervous, they have nervous energy, they don't know what to expect. Will they have friends? Are there people here from other placements that they know? Are they running into their all of that is going through their mind as if it was the first day of school. So you have to look at your IL program as the first day of school. And not only are you the principal, but remember, you're also the student. So you want to start off by introducing yourself in a way that doesn't just say, like, hey, I'm the boss. You need to listen to me, right? You want to initially engage in a way that shows that I have responsibility to you, and you also have a responsibility, not to me, but to yourself to succeed. And you can definitely convey that in the introduction with you guys. It even starts by just saying your name in such a way like, hey, I'm Stephanie. A lot of times people like to be formal to establish a level of respect. That's totally fine. I'm Miss Keahey. I usually say my first and last name. I'm Stephanie Keahey. That respect, if they're going to give it to you, they're going to give it to you. Usually teenagers automatically add that Miss or Mr. handle to your name on their own. So you don't necessarily have to force respect in that way, I've come to find from my experiences. And I just introduce my way and myself rather in a way that clearly states like, hey, I'm Stephanie, I'm the youth consultant. This is what I'm here for. If you need anything at all, I'm totally your go-to person on that. And I also, depending on the setting, make sure that the young people know what is expected of them as well. Because sometimes we start the tango of I'm service provider, you're service receiver in a way that automatically says like, well, clearly you came to me, so you need me. And that creates an unnecessary imbalance of power between the young person and the service provider. And we definitely don't want to do that because it creates unnecessary strain and unnecessary arguments and horrible ISPs later. Trust me on this. Sometimes we focus more on the strength of our titles because we worked very hard to get them. The letters behind our names did not come without blood, sweat, and tears, and we want to make sure that people know who we are when we walk in the room. Unfortunately, in a room full of young people, especially teenagers, that part does not matter at all. They could pretty much care less about your titles and what those letters mean behind your name, but it's more about what can I receive from you that will benefit me. I know that's not really the best thing to say, or it doesn't really sound good to say that, but that's pretty much the truth of the matter. So titles don't matter to them in that moment of introduction. So it's just like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm here for. None of that matters in this moment because I'm here for you. So what is it that I can do for you? This is what I can do. How can what I do be of use or benefit to you? Because you want to make sure that, hey, you know that I am an ally for you. I am here on your side. My whole purpose of us interacting is so that you can have success after foster care as well as during your tenure in foster care. And you want them to definitely understand that you have enough enemies and I'm not trying to be one of them. Think of your introduction, like we were saying, as the first day of school. Remember with the averages, I remember when I was in school, they would always say, hey, everybody has a perfect average. It is up to you to either keep it at 100, a perfect average, or whatever grades that you make will take away from that. Well, it's pretty much the same thing with our IO teens. Whatever you do, however you interact with them, either adds or takes away from your average with them. And what I mean by average is the status of how they view you as being a beneficial service provider to them, how they view what it is that you do as being necessary to the grand scheme of their lives. Oftentimes, um, our teens kind of put who we are and what we do into this foster care box of just, I'll only need this service from this person while I'm in this situation, instead of looking at it as lifetime connections, which makes that introduction so important because they need to know that, hey, I am not just here for the 6 or 10 or 12 months that you're contracted for this service or that you're a part of this program. I am actually an ally that is here for the long run so that you can have success in every area of your life, not just while you're in care. You really do have about 2 minutes. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing, but just based on my experience, I have honestly seen that you only have about 2 minutes, 120 seconds for a young person to put you into a mental box of how they'll view you. And it takes a lot. They have barriers, which I'm sure everybody knows. There are these walls, these onion layers that you have to be willing to go through. You don't necessarily have to peel through them because sometimes they'll come off on their own, sometimes they'll peel their own layers off, and sometimes you do have to be willing to do the work to help pull those layers off. But it's okay because remember, we've already introduced ourselves to them as an ally. So, also, our introductions of ourselves and how we view our averages and our grade point average with our young people definitely plays a large part into the leverage that we may need or may not need to forge through the course. It is a lot easier to get a young person who trusts what you say or who at least trusts you as a verified resource in that area to go along with or at least view things from your vantage point if they view you as an ally. Now, am I saying that your primary goal should be to make sure that the young people like you? Absolutely not. Because you'll fail horribly from that vantage point. But what I am saying is that it should be very concise that your role in that young person's life is strictly to be an ally. Because we all know, based on the situations and the circumstances that cause them to have to come into care, they already feel like they have enough enemies against them, enough people stacked against them, enough red tape of their own personal lives to go through. So what they don't need is one more person that they feel like is against them. And that's what I was saying about making sure that even the introduction to them, as you first begin to present the service to them, if you're a caseworker, when you first get the caseload, if you're a community partner that partners and you have a service that you provide to clients, when you do the initial introduction, you definitely want to do it from a perspective of I am an ally. I am here for you, and my sole purpose in this moment is to help make sure that you experience success aftercare. The menu. One of the best parts of any great school when you're shopping for a school, when you're at a new school, because a lot of times our young people actually just get enrolled in our schools. They don't really get a chance to choose what it is that we have to provide to them. And that's another reason why it is so, so, so very important that we present what we have in a packaged way that lets them automatically know what I have is beneficial to you. And you definitely want to be a part of it. What are one of the main, for me, I always ask, what kind of food is being served that I like to eat. So I always want to know what is on the menu. Well, the same is true for your school that you have with your IL teams. You definitely want to have an amazing menu because, ironically, literally, teenagers love to eat. And they eat all the time. Kids generally just, but young people just love to eat. They love to just always have a snack, always have something going on. Well, the same is true for the knowledge that we have to provide to these young people, even if it comes off in the form of being defiant or rebellious. The truth of the matter is that they are still just as hungry for the information that we have to provide, and we want to make sure that we provide a menu that lets them know that this is top of the line, and I promise you, you're going to want to eat here as much as possible. So, how do we set up our menu for our young people? Well, first, there's the appetizer. And the appetizer will be the first ILP meeting or the first service after your consultation. It will be the first visit with them after you initially let them know that you're the new caseworker for them, or whatever capacity that you serve our IL teams with. The appetizer will be the first meeting after the introduction. So what does an appetizer do? An appetizer, hold on one second, let me plug in. What does an appetizer do? An appetizer, you get it first, right? And when you get the appetizer, you're usually still talking, and it gives you a glimpse of what the restaurant has to offer. You can usually, for me, I can usually judge the quality of an entree based on that initial appetizer, the way they bring it out, how it looks, how it tastes, and how full I get after it. So you want to make sure that the first meeting that you have, the first service that you provide after the initial consultation or introduction to our young people is appetizing, because you have to keep them engaged for sure. Remember that 120 seconds that we talked about in that intro? It's definitely going to come into play here when you give them the appetizer of that first meeting to let them know, like, hey, this is definitely something that will be of benefit to you. After that, we have our soup or our salad per your preference. I'm a salad girl. Uh, that is the defined balance of what is expected to come. So the soup or the salad kind of balances your palate after you've had your appetizer. It's usually something that is not heavy at all. It's not hard to process. And the same should be true for the information that we have at our first meeting after our introduction to our young people. That soup or salad should mean that the information that we are presenting to those young people is not difficult to understand. It is not hard to convey. I try to always speak in a way that the person who has absolutely no clue what I'm speaking about, as well as the person who is masterly trained in what I'm speaking about, can both understand without regard or feeling um, that it's above their head. And oftentimes we lose our young people like that. We present information because we already know that this information is beneficial to them. So we don't feel necessarily compelled to present it in a way that lets them know that this is for you, because it's kind of like we don't want to have the, "Oh, well, I already have mine, you should get yours" attitude. It should be, regardless of whether I have mine or not, my job is to make sure that you have access to yours. And the soup and salad definitely does that. It's that balance of, hey, this is important information and you're important. So you want to make sure that you grab this information. Make sure that you convey it in a way, again, that is clear and concise across the board, that a toddler or a tenured professor can understand it. Because once, sometimes because of educational barriers or vocational barriers or sometimes mental barriers, our young people will tend to turn off themselves seemingly against the information that we're presenting, because it sounds like I don't understand that. And if I don't understand it, it's hard for me to apply it to my everyday life. So something as simple or soup or salad, we can present our information in that way so that it's defined balance of what they can expect from you as a service provider. The entree, that is the part that you have looked over the menu for. You've kind of consulted with your friends about what are you having, what looks good. You've asked other professionals, what would you suggest? What's the specialty here? What is this restaurant, this school rather, known for? How is the menu in this cafeteria? And the entree represents the presentation of the informative part of the IL, right? So the super salad is just that defined balance. It lets them know, hey, this is the information that we'll be conveying today. Again, we're presenting that information in a way that is clear and concise across the board. So when that entree comes, it all flows together. So the entree, again, is the presentation of the informative part of the independent living service that you provide. So the entree, when they get it, when they first get the information, right, it's probably going to be in a condensed package, because we usually don't have a long time to present that information, maybe from about 30 minutes to 2 hours. So we want to make sure that how we present the information to them and package it is in such a way that it looks delicious. Like, this is totally information that I can apply to my life, and I'm ready to dig into it right now because this looks great, this information sounds great, and I can't wait to ingest it and digest it so that I can see how amazing this tastes, this information tastes. So that is our entree. Now, the thing about the entree is pretty much your curriculum. It is going to be something that will not just be um, one lesson. Usually, curriculum, I would suggest, from my experience, something that builds on the previous layer of what you spoke about, because it works better if it flows together. It works better if it makes sense. Connected dots work better for our teams, for them to be able to see that A plus B equals C. And we want to be sure to build our curriculums around that when we provide our services to them. We want to definitely make sure that we are not going from tangent to tangent. Imagine like a monkey swinging from vine to vine without regard or structure. We definitely don't want to do that. We want to make sure that those dots, that the menu flows together, and those items that we've selected for our IL menu definitely build upon each other, and they all flow together and complement each other in a graceful, beautiful package. That makes it way easier. And I know it sounds like, why do I have to present it and say, why do I have to do all this? Because it works. Because it works. And because these are young people that we are cultivating. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is not haphazard, because these people will be running the world way sooner than we are really ready to absorb. So after the entree, again, the entree is going to take them a little while to digest that. If you notice, the entree is usually larger than your appetizer or your salad, which means that this information that you're providing to our young people will be again a stretch of curriculum information. Think of it in terms of a syllabus. By this time, you should have accomplished this. And again, everybody eats differently. Everybody does not chew the same way. Everybody does not operate with the same speed. Keep that in mind when you present your entree to our IL youth, because the thing about it is you have to present the information in such a way, which is not always a difficult task, that all of them can understand it at the same time with their own mechanics that they have. And that is not always an easy task. I am well aware of that. But that is one of the amazing parts about this being your school, the fact that it is your IL school, which makes this your IL cafeteria. You can actually tailor the menu for different dietary restrictions, if that makes sense, for the different young people that have different dietary needs in your program, because definitely you want to make sure that every student who has decided, whether on their own or from their circumstance, is able to enjoy a meal in your cafeteria. So the entree, some people may take longer to chew the food that's being presented to them, but that does not mean that they are not enjoying it. There are certain things that are presented with the entree to our young people that look different, and we all know how that goes. If something looks different or it doesn't look appeasing, then it is automatically gross and most times rejected. So you want to present it in a way that, hey, I know you may not like this, but I need you to try it anyway, because you know that what is on that entree is nutritionally sound and beneficial for them. So you are allowed, and it's very important to know that there will be some IL young people that just do not like what is being presented on your entree. Well, we can't condemn them for that, and we definitely can't be condescending to that fact. But what we can do is say, I know that there is a chance that you may not like this, and you are allowed to dislike something. We definitely don't want to take away their right to choose at any time. You are allowed to dislike it, but you are not allowed to not try it, if that makes sense. So at least you try it, and that, try. Just try it. You can not like it, but just try it. And even if it takes them a long time to finish it, even if they don't eat it all, seemingly. They leave some of the information on the plate. This can be reflected in flyers left in seats or information that you've passed out not being picked up. That is the example of food being left on the tray, information that you've just presented that they can't seem to remember the next time that you have a conversation with them. All of that is reflective of either eating slow or an unfinished entree. But that does not mean that, again, what you've presented is not desirable. It means that it is probably different and it is a different texture, especially if we're dealing with young people who have not been exposed to the type of menu that you provide, because their eating habits were not as defined as they'll have to be now that they're teenagers. You have to also keep that in mind, that the reason they may not be liking your entree is not because what you're presenting is not good food or delicious food. It's because they've been probably drinking milk a long time, and the information that you're providing to them really represents solid foods in their life. So think about that as that transition. Sometimes you have to go slow, cut it up in little pieces, easy to digest, that don't present a choking hazard. That's pretty good. So definitely keep that in mind with your entree, which is the information that you are presenting to our ILU. Now, what happens after the entree? Are we super full, or are we, let's go back. Are we super full after our entree, or are we going to make room for dessert? So, usually, if you're not too full, you are going to make room for dessert. Now, what does dessert represent? Dessert is that those groups of young people that are waiting to file out of your room after you present your information. Now, a lot of times we as service providers tend to use that time to clean up, to take down our AV stuff that we use for our presentation, to make sure that young people are going with their respective placement supervisors and staff members. But you're missing out on your dessert if you are not using that interaction with them in that group as they're getting ready to leave, to get that feedback, to see how they liked it. Like, look at the temperature of how they're reacting. How are they leaving? Are they leaving like, hey, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm ready to go? Are we engaging with them after our services are provided, or are we just like, hey, have a good day, see you next time, same bat channel? No, because we are missing out on free desserts when we do that. Delectable desserts. There is nothing like the feedback of a young person. Actually, it is very beneficial to the services that we provide. It is very beneficial to our mandate as a whole, to definitely protect such a vulnerable population. And if we don't value the tips and feedback, especially after a service that we've provided for them, well, then that makes our menu imbalanced, because we definitely need the dessert of their feedback to know what to put on the menu for next time or next week, or whenever it is that we get to come together and break bread together again. I want to make sure that the menu keeps you excited to come back. And that's not always a fun or easy thing to do, to keep things easy to understand, to keep your menu amazing and balanced at the same time. That's not always an easy task, but it is definitely necessary to the bottom line of success after care. So please, 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 make sure that they have a little room after their entree, and make sure that you also have a little room, because remember, we're doing this from a student teacher perspective. We're still learning as we're teaching. So that means that we have to eat in our own cafeteria as well. So we also need to save room for dessert, to make sure that the interactions after our event we're getting feedback. We're seeing how they felt about it. What can I do better? Did you like it? What didn't you like? Were you bored? Why were you bored? Those things are important, because you have to present a menu to them again in the near future, and you don't want to do 7 weeks of the same thing that's not working. You don't want to have a whole curriculum for a year, and yes, you retain numbers. You've got young people to come in and be there with you, and you can say that we served this many young people, but was it effective? Well, you won't really know that if you don't take the time to kind of have a little dessert every now and then. And again, just like dessert, you don't necessarily have to overindulge in it. You can just get a little bit, just kind of balance things out, and now you're good, you're full, you can go lay down. Don't eat and lay down. There will be puke. So keep a cleanup kit handy. What happens when we eat too much, or eat something that doesn't really agree with us, or something our body is not used to? Sometimes hey, it happens. And what that means is that you're not going to hit it 100% of the time. To just be honest with you, I would say the sooner that you can resolve that the information that you provide will either help someone or offend someone. Um, those are two of the options, and you have to be okay with that. You will not reach every single young person every time, but that is okay, because every menu is not for every young person. Sometimes you may prepare an entree for 100 people, and only 22 of your teens may really enjoy the entree, and the others are just like, it was okay. Or it may even make some of them puke. What does puke represent? It would be them not wanting to return, or it would be them feeling as if the information that you presented is not beneficial to them. That's another way of feeling like there's puke in the lunchroom. Like, hey, this is definitely informative. You need this. Why are you not grasping that concept? That is okay. That comes with it. It comes with the fact that they're adolescents. They're also processing their life in a way that is a continuous conveyor belt of self-esteem, criticism of themselves, peer influences. It's all continuously this conveyor belt, and they're trying to keep up with the assembly line that they're looking at influences that they're getting from social media and TV, and all of that is going on. And then on top of all of that, they still have to process life in a way as a young person in foster care. So can you imagine that? You're already battling being an adolescent, growing up as a teenager, forget being a young person in foster care. We're not even talking about that. You already have to figure out, who am I as a person? What matters to me? What are my values? What do I stand on? What do I agree with? What do I disagree with? What am I attracted to? What repels me? And on top of that, you also have to figure out how to navigate this system of foster care. And how do I navigate figuring out who I am as a person, as a young person evolving, and as a young person involving in foster care? So the two intertwine, but they are not the same. And that's important to always know that. And sometimes puke happens as a result of that. Sometimes information is just like, ugh, I don't like that. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to do that. And it happens. And you should definitely be prepared of it. Be prepared for it. Again, this is your school. So there has to be a janitor. You have to hire a janitor. And sometimes until we hire janitors, we have to be that. We have to be that person that is ready to clean up the mess. And we have to be willing to have those tough conversations, right? Because janitors have to do some pretty amazing things. I know when I was in school, I saw stuff that I would just be like, I would have never cleaned that up ever. But we have to be willing to do that. And what does that mean? That means we have to be willing to have those tough conversations. There are going to be some things that are not kosher that we have to discuss with our young people. And sometimes we fall so madly in love with them, and they're just the cutest people ever. And we've worked so hard to build this relationship with them that we don't want to have those tough conversations. But we got to be willing to have them. We have to be willing to make the tough decisions, because there's no tree that grows without being pruned. So sometimes we have to get those little clippers and help our young people cut away those leaves that are no good for them. We have to understand that we have to help our young people understand that life is not rainbows and skittles. I know we want it to be sometimes, and we want that. The protective nature that we have also wants us to have that available for them. But the reality of the situation is, once they're 21, they are open to a complete, and oftentimes before then, they are open to a completely different league where those protective walls are removed. So we have to understand that we still have to present the information, knowing that there's a very strong possibility that it may be regurgitated. But that's okay, because we have our cleanup kit handy, and we just revamp and represent it, and because it's information that they will definitely need. So be not weary in that fact. Also be intentional, again, because this is your school. So there are going to be times that you also have to eat from this menu, more often than not, actually. So you want to be sure to not ingest negative words yourself so that you won't regurgitate them. Don't make it a habit to always have negative things to say, even if our young people are doing negative things. You don't want to train your brain to view them in that viewpoint, because what happens most times, we found from our experiences, is that those things regurgitate and they come back up as bile at one of the most inopportune times rather, for our young people, because again, that conveyor belt is consistently moving. I'm consistently aware of my own flaws and who I am as a person. And a lot of times, young people put 100 on 10, as we say. Something that is very small to what we would consider is extremely changing my whole world for a young person. And we definitely have to be mindful of that. We don't have to make it a precedent, but we need to be mindful of that conveyor belt is also moving. So we don't want to view them in a negative light. We don't want to allow narratives or case plans or ISP goals or anything that we've read or heard or been told to have us viewing our young person in a negative light. Because what happens when we ingest all that negative stuff? Well, it's going to be regurgitated. Well, when will it be regurgitated? Because I can just hold on to it, right? No, you're gonna belch or something in front of that young person. And it's gonna come up in a way that lets them know, like, well, you don't feel like I'm much anyway, so why would I even try? I'm telling you, it happens like so super quick. As soon as they feel like you're against them, it's like there's this wall that pops up and they're instantly not receiving any information that you have. Now, does that mean that we don't have the tough conversations because the information is difficult or because we have to have those tough conversations? Absolutely not. But it does mean that we should make a point to season the words that we're about to say with salt and pepper, as I say, so that it will be received a little bit better. It's not about sugarcoating, but it is about seasoning, if that makes sense. So that it's received a little better, because you have to realize you're speaking to a young person whose brain has not fully developed yet. So logic and reasoning has not immediately found them. And I think it's important that we keep that in our frontal to understand that, hey, I have to be careful about the words that I choose concerning, even, for example, the decisions that this young person has made, so that they can understand it in a way that, remember, because we still have introduced ourselves to them as an ally, and we have to maintain that position throughout. So what happens is, once you've made it a point that you're an ally, your position and your vantage point has to be from that of an ally going forward, because they will instantly view you as a traitor if they feel like you have switched sides on them, for lack of a better phrase. So even if you have to deliver the tough conversations or have those tough moments of, hey, you, let's talk about how this could have been better, and leave it to them to make the decisions. I wouldn't even come from a perspective of fussing at them, for the lack of a better word. Let's talk about how we could have made this better. And again, because we're allies, we use pronouns like we and us. We try not to say things like, if I were you, I would have, because we don't know that. Let's get off the highways. Let's get off I-459 and I-20, and let's get on we and us and how can we do this. And it lets them know words like that. Let them know that we have a team and that we are part of that team. And not only are you a part of that team, but you want your young person to know that they are also part of the team, because we can't do it without them and they can't do it without us. And that needs to be the forefront of whatever it is that we're doing. We are better and stronger together. So if you have anything to say, if you have to have those hard conversations with them, just make sure that you are taking a minute to think about it, especially if it's a situation where you have to gently guide them back towards the the school if they've been suspended, if they've done something that's caused you, if they've disrupted placement, whatever it is, just make sure, even if it's something that is horribly inconvenient and causes you to have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're frustrated, you had to rearrange your whole day, still, don't forget, don't ever leave the house without your salt and pepper, because that stuff is going to come back up as gross puke if you don't. Hope that makes sense. Report cards. So report cards. So we're in our school. The mission statement of the school is pretty clear. They understand what type of institution of learning they have enrolled in, which means that they know the services that are going to be provided to them. They understand what it is that we are providing on a level that makes sense to them. It is not over their heads. They understand everything that they're signing, and we're flowing at this point. So that brings us to our first grading period, which is our report cards. So how do we get our report cards in our school from our IL teams? What does that look like? What do we do with that? Well, that just means that we are getting feedback from them. That means that we are creating a safe space for them to provide their opinions, their concerns, their ideas, or nothing at all. So that brings us to our accolades. A lot of times, prestigious institutions, they hold themselves high in regard for the accolades that it's doing it again, for the accolades that they have. And the same should be true for the services that we provide for our IL youth. We should definitely view the services that we provide as a prestigious institution of learning that they have signed up for. So, what is our school known for? What are the services that we provide and known for? What are the buzzwords surrounding what it is that we do? That is what's going to say a lot, because that is what the young people are going to tell other young people about the services. And word of mouth, as we know, travels a long way. And not saying that, again, we're trying to sugarcoat or make something that it is not, but we do want to make sure that the services that we are provide have a nice buzz. You definitely need a buzz to get the ILBs in. So you want to make sure that your school is known for being informative and efficient, consistent. That is very important, that the services that are provided are consistent. If I start off being able to reach you by phone all the time, and then now all of a sudden you are unreachable and taking weeks to respond to even my emails, that creates an unnecessary power struggle later, because it's like, when I need you, I can't reach you. So why would I receive information from you, if that makes sense? Is the mission statement seen in our daily tasks? All that means is, are we doing what we promised to do? Are we doing what we told our stakeholders we would do? Are we doing what we told those who are invested in us? Are we doing what we even told ourselves that we would do when we first decided to do this amazing work? Are we sticking to that? Are we holding tight to our principles? Again, is our mission statement still the same? And can you see our mission statement in everything we do? In every service we provide, can you see the foundation that we built what we provide on? That should be seen in every moment, in every task, with every young person, because that is where that consistency comes in. You have to make sure that what you said and say that you are going to do and provide is evidently seen. Because again, it creates those roadblocks. It messes with our averages, which messes with our report cards, which evidently becomes our bottom line for our young people with success after care. Next, do you hire adjunct professors? That's an interesting one. How willing are you to partner with other service providers in your community? Again, that goes back to what we were talking about. Sometimes we have a tendency as service providers to herd for the numbers, which reflect well when it's time to get grants and things. But how effective can we be if we don't partner with someone else who may even be able to provide a similar service in a better way that reaches that young person? At the end of the day, if the mantle or the bottom line is success for that young person, it really doesn't matter who provides the service as long as it's provided. So be willing to hire adjunct professionals, partner with people in your community who are like, hey, this is what we do, this is what we provide, and we feel that we could actually fill in that gap between what you're trying to convey to the young person and what is being received. And now what you've done is that you've added some really amazing people to your team of professionals, and that actually makes your school look amazing, because you have some of the best people in the community partnering with you that also share your same love and passion for successful young people who have been discharged from foster care. Who is your favorite teacher? A lot of times when we are doing amazing things, we can reflect on someone who inspired us originally to do those amazing things. Never, ever, ever lose sight of that, and don't be afraid to share that with our young people and let them know, hey, I am a teacher, but I am also a student, because I am learning from someone else continually and consistently. I'm gleaning from someone else, who is that person that you glean from, because not only will you be getting information from them that helps you, they are holding you accountable to your mission statement and the foundational principles that you stated to those young people that your school stands for. And you need that. Accountability is not something, it's not the most exciting or glamorous word, but it's definitely necessary to that bottom line. You want to make sure that there is someone who holds you, your agency, your service providers accountable for what it is that they say they are doing with our young people. Because again, we're cultivating future leaders. So we definitely need to keep that in the forefront of our mind to make sure that can I do a mirror check? Am I doing everything that I said that I was going to do today? Period. Is my mission statement evident in everything that I did today? Did I make every young person that I came into contact with, they will either become bitter or better, or better or worse as a result of interacting with you? And I find myself, I do that. Sometimes I ask myself, was this young person that I interacted with today better or worse as a result of interacting with me? And that's important because what we do, the seeds that we plant now, we are planting trees that we may not see the shade of with our young people. And it's important that we realize that with every interaction, with every deed, with every lesson, with every curriculum, we need to view that as a seed that may harvest at a time that we're not even able to see. So, lesson planning. This is what is going on when we are not having our classes, when our school is not in session. We are still getting ready for them when we're not even around them. We're also, do you think about IL outside of standard hours? I know some people are like, no, I don't. When I'm at home. But certain positions and certain service choices don't allow you to do that. You have to consistently, especially when dealing with what I consider to be such a vulnerable but loving population, you have to consistently and always be open to ways to be better because there are so many young people and they're everywhere, and you want to always be looking at ways that independent living can be better from the service that you provide, because we're not just doing it for the young people that are in front of us now, but the generations of young people that are to come. And there's no way that you could just do that between 9 to 5. I'm not saying that you have to totally consume your day and your life with IL, but there should be moments outside of the standard office, standard visits, standard contacts and narratives that prick your heart and make you have reflective moments of, hey, this could be better if we do this that way, or situations that you see in the lives of others. Sometimes we can learn lessons that we didn't even have to experience ourselves. We can take those lessons from experience from other people. So, do you have a great relationship with the teens in your personal life? Why does that matter? Well, it does because it is going to be hard to bridge the gap when you are not even connecting with your own nieces and nephews who are the exact same ages as the young people that you are privileged to serve, that we are all privileged to serve. Um, Use that as a vantage point. Maybe not necessarily your main vantage point, but definitely a key one. Of how do I interact with those young people? How can I connect the dots? And if you have an amazing relationship with the young people that are in your life personally, but you can't seem to connect with the young people that you provide services to professionally, I would suggest taking a moment to unpack that and figure out why. Because there is absolutely no difference between a 14-year-old who is in foster care and a 14-year-old who is not in foster care, except the last 5 words of who is in foster care. That's pretty much the only difference, is that the parental setup is different. The conveyor belt is still the same. That 14-year-old who is not in foster care is still going through that same conveyor belt of feelings and emotions and trying to figure it all out, just like our teens are. And there's absolutely no difference. So if you are this amazing aunt or uncle or godfather or grandmother or whatever your role is in the life of a teen, and you find yourself struggling professionally with that same age group, I would suggest definitely unpacking that to figure out where the breakdown comes in, because there again is absolutely no difference in our young people. And we want to make sure that we always remember that, because if there is a defined distinction in the two relationships, something has gone awry. And we definitely need to make sure that we are cognizant of that, because we want to provide the best case practice at all times. Would you pay to attend your own school? If it was not your curriculum, if it was not your service that you were providing, and there was another person who was doing exactly what you were doing, would you pay for that? Would you sign up for that? Would you want to be a part of this class that you're teaching if you had to be on the learning side? Because we are always student teachers. We are always learning. We are always teaching and learning at the same time. So would you be a part of what it is that you're doing if you didn't have to do it? Would you sign up for your class? Would you do that workshop that way? Well, if you don't even like doing these types of things, then how is it that you can efficiently provide that service? Am I viewing the information that I present in a way that's effective and applicable? Can the young people take? I always try to say that I would like to make sure that whatever I present to you today, you can use today. And if that situation comes up today, that you'll be able to use the tools that you have that you just got right now. And that is important because there is actually nothing that we should be presenting to them that they won't need sooner than later, because that is the entire point of us getting them prepared for success after care. So if it's budgeting, then they should be able to use those skills on the ride home of budgeting when they stop to grab something to eat and they look at how much money they have. When they get home, they should be able to use what they've learned with cooking skills to make themselves a meal. They should be able to use cleanup tips that you've given them. For our IL students who have their own apartments, they should be able to use those skills immediately when they get home. And to be quite frank, we should present those skills in a way that actually has them excited to use what they've learned. If we did a class once where we taught them how to brought a chef in and they taught them how to use simple ingredients to make a chicken pot pie. And it was so simple and so easy that the kids were literally excited to go home that day or the next day to make a pot pie. That's how we should be presenting our information in a way that is effective because it sticks and it sticks in the front of their minds and it's applicable. I can go and do this right now. So we always want to make sure that we are continually lesson planning to reach our young people. My wishes for this school year. So whenever you start, and this list can be cumulative, and it can definitely be tweaked how you need it. So it's my wishes for this school year. I feel like every time you have a new client that you provide services to, every time your caseload switches up, well, the school year just started over for you. And you want to definitely have wishes for this school year. How am I? I've read the narrative. I've introduced myself to this young person. We've had our visit. I have given them, they've had their first entree, their first meal in our cafeteria. So, what are my wishes for this young person for this school year? And are those wishes for just the young person? No, it's also for us. We have, how can I be a better person as a result of interacting with this young person? What can I do to make sure that at every moment I am presenting the best version of myself to them? Well, part of the ways that you do that is you set attainable goals for yourself as well, because again, student teacher perspective. So as you're teaching, you're also learning, and you are learning about yourself, you're learning about the way you communicate, you are learning about how the information that you present is received by others. And it is a continuum of also care for us to make sure that, again, we're putting that best foot forward at all times, not just with our young people, but just in life and just who we are. And we're going to set those attainable goals, goals that we can reach. We're not going to tell them about 3, 6, 12-month goal plans and we don't have them. Again, we want to be a student at our own school. A mirror check frequently. I am a huge advocate for the mirror check. At the end of the day, I try to remember to look in the mirror and ask myself, did I do the very best that I could today? If I cannot answer that with yes, well, then I kind of reflect on the ways that I could have done or been better, not from a condescending standpoint, of course, but in a way that totally makes me prevent a better version of myself the next time. Lastly, don't be afraid to try. There are some amazing things out there that we can do that we'll never know about if we're not going to try them. There are a lot of programs, a lot of things that are outside of our comfort zone that we can do with our young people that are actually pretty successful and that have measurable outcomes, but we won't know them or see them if we don't try them. And there is no way that you can tell a young person that all they need to do is try or they'll miss 100% of the shots that they never take if we ourselves are not doing that same thing and are not trying new things or engaging in new territory. So never, ever, ever be afraid to try. And to add to that, if a young person can see that you yourself tried something and failed at it, a lot of times that is very scary as an adult to let a young person who you feel looks up to you see you fall. Don't feel like that because nothing is more concrete of an example than a young person being able to see a concrete example of where someone who is an ally, one of their instructors, tried something, set a plan, they tried it, it didn't work out, they didn't trip, they got back up and tried it again or did something different or rebranded or whatever. We have no idea how far that goes with a young person because if I can see somebody else fall and get back up and they did it, well, then I can do it. Your turn to interview me. You always, 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 one of the most key components is to keep that line of communication open. They have lots of questions. Young people have lots of questions, and we always say that there's no such thing as a dumb question. But I want you to present yourself and your information and the services that you provide to where that has to go without saying. Like, there's no need to say there's no dumb question because you have created such a amazingly safe space for the young people to be themselves that they don't even think twice about the questions that they ask you. That there is always an open door of constant communication. That if I have to ask you about, well, how do you do this? Well, how do you tie a tie? Do you mind teaching me to change a tire? How do I iron a blouse? Even do I wash this with this? Whatever it is, they should always feel confident to have that open line of communication with you to know that I can come to you and ask you anything and I don't have to feel like what I've said is dumb or that I'm dumb for not knowing that because it says a lot when a young person trusts you to ask a question, especially about something that's going on in their life, especially about something that they feel that they don't know. That's very important because again, that conveyor belt with the adolescents, they kind of feel like, well, I already know this. Nobody knows my life better than me. No one can tell me anything. So for them to be in a place to trust you to ask a question, don't take that lightly at all. And always be empowered to be honest in your response with the question, with tact, of course, but always feel resolved to answer that question truthfully because once they have figured out you have not been truthful with them, it is amazingly hard to get those walls torn back down to get back to that original place. Again, 100 on 10 with those emotions and logic and reasoning has not found them yet. So something that does not seem like a big deal to us is astoundingly huge to them. So we definitely don't want to be caught not being honest about anything for any reason and also feel resolved to say, hey, I don't have the answer for that, but what I can do is research the answer and follow back up with you. Now, what you definitely want to do is make sure that you do the follow up because that also goes a long way with saying they actually got back to me about something that I asked them for or a question that I had for them. They actually followed up with me. And that places that sense of value that what I have to say and what bothers me, what questions I have, what's important to me is also important to the person that provides these services for me, my chancellor, my principal at my school. This is also important to them. So that means that I'm important. And it just changes the whole trajectory of how they view themselves, how they view their case plan. A little goes a long way. Trust me on that. So always be willing. They're going to have a lot of questions. So if you're not a person that is apt to want to answer a lot of questions, you definitely want to have an adjunct professor on standby for sure that can answer those questions for that young person, because they're going to come. And don't take that lightly. I can't resound that enough. Don't take that lightly if a young person does in fact trust you to answer questions. You guys are going to have an amazing school year. Every young person that you touch, every young person you get to interact with, provide a service for. Do not take that lightly. I always say let's have the perspective rather of I get to versus I have to, because again, these are tomorrow's leaders, and it is a privilege actually to be able to serve these young people. We are going to have a great year learning together. That is what you want to be the unspoken mantra of the services that you provide. You want it in every interaction to be obvious that we are going to have a great year learning together. I want you to always have us remaining in a position that keeps us consistently teachable and willing to learn, because stuff is changing every day. The taste in music of young people are changing, how they view information, how information is presented to them is consistently changing. So you want to always be open to that change and always be willing to be taught or willing to learn. If you see a little dance, they love something as simple as teach me how to do that, because it brings you into their world. It brings you exactly where they are, and it gives you a glimpse of what to put in your lesson plan for your next year's curriculum. We are not raising children. We are not. We are cultivating future dynamic leaders who have a defined mandate to positively affect and change the world. And yes, I did just quote myself on that. I always say that we are not raising kids. We're raising actually adults who just happen to be kids, and we're also cultivating future dynamic leaders. Like we are, every interaction with a young person that you have is another seed that's planted. Every interaction somebody else has, it may water. Like you may plant the seed, somebody else may water it. Everything that we're doing is part of that cultivating process, and we never, ever want to forget that young person will be made better or worse as a result of interacting with you. And it's just so it's just I mean it just is what it is on that. And those young people have a defined mandate to change the world, and they're going to do it with or without us. They are definitely going to change the world. So if we have an opportunity to be a part of that catalyst of change, then we definitely want to make sure that we are working as diligently as possible to make sure that our institutions of learning for our IL students are proficient, efficient, and effective. So here's to you and your amazing school year. Again, I am Stephanie Keahey. I am the Independent Living Youth Coordinator, Youth Consultant, Jesus, for the Central Region of Alabama. I am surrounded by an amazing team of people who are more than willing to help us get the ball rolling to make sure that you have an amazing school, regardless of what um, point you are at with your school. If you need help with lesson planning, if you've been having some terrible report cards, if your menu sucks, whatever it is, reach out and we can definitely jump in and help with that. This has been amazing, and I hope that you guys have learned a lot. If you have any questions, please send them to me, and I am happy to help. Have an amazing day.